Now, demonstrators around the world have joined forces online under the hashtag DROP33 to protest the planned anti-transgender legislation in Hungary. The hashtag references Section 33 of a new bill approved by Parliament. It ends the legal recognition of transgender and intersex people. The changes will see the state record individuals' sex at birth without allowing for it to be revised later on, effectively banning transgender people from being recognized before the law. To try and get a sense of what brought these changes about, we're now joined via Skype from Budapest by Áron Demeter, who's at Amnesty International in Hungary. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program. Give us a little bit of background as to where we were in Hungary in terms of the law regarding intersex people and transgender, and what's brought this shift that it's actually now being passed in Parliament.
Good evening. Actually, for nearly 3.5 years, the government has suspended legal gender recognition in Hungary because they were claiming that they are going to adopt a new transparent and accessible law to transgender people. So this law, which was adopted on Wednesday, was really a slap on the face because no one was expecting a law which effectively bans gender legal recognition. There is a growing number of people and a growing number of acceptance around the LGBT community in Hungary. But in the last couple of years, we've seen a rise in homophobic and transphobic comments from the government. But so far, on the legislative side, nothing serious has happened except this transgender law, which is a very serious human rights violation.
Why has government hardened its stance on this and, as you say, become more homophobic? What has informed this? Is it political pressure? What's behind this, do you think?
It's a very good question, but the Hungarian government's current narrative is a very, old-fashioned or traditional way of communication, claiming that the country belongs to white heterosexual males. It actually not just excludes the LGBT community, but also thinks about women as kind of secondary citizens. So anybody who is not a heterosexual, male, white, kind of classified as a not true Hungarian. So in that sense, this kind of communication and actually these kinds of laws fits into the picture.
Is this out of sync with society in general, or is this sort of the pervading attitude of most people in society that they are generally conservative and old-fashioned?
Hungarian society is generally relatively conservative, but every survey shows in the last couple of years that there is a growing tendency of acceptance. So more and more people think that the LGBT community should have the same right as the heterosexuals. So actually, it's more about government is trying to, formulate the narrative and the public discourse rather than it's a demand from the public.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the legislation itself. What will it mean for the LGBT community?
The consequences will be very harsh. So the transgender and intersex community are already probably the most marginalized groups, even within the LGBT community. What would it mean that they cannot change their documents, their self-identification documents, which would mean that whenever they have to use those documents, so whenever they are going to the hospital or applying for a job or want to go to the authorities, they have to disclose that they are transgender, which could lead to further discrimination. And there is also a fear that the number of hate crimes against transgender and intersex people will increase.
All right. And what have members of this community been saying? You talked about some of the fears of hate and possibly even attacks, I guess. What have they been sharing and saying?
They are sharing their personal stories. They are sharing how hard is it to be transgender, and how hard is to come out, even to their very closest friends and relatives. So one can imagine how hard can it be to become, a transgender person in public. They are devastated, obviously. In the transgender community, there is a high risk of self-harm and suicide attempts, and even mental health problems. And this legislation will most likely lead to very serious consequences.
All right, so what about religious figures? I know that the country is more than half Catholic, but the Catholic Church has been, as you say, a bit more, I won't say lenient, but understanding over time. Have the religious leaders in the various communities come in support to help this community?
It's not usual. It's not usual even for the broader LGBT community. So there are some figures in different churches who would publicly support the equal rights. But in general, it's not usual that any person who is affiliated with the church would openly support the LGBT rights. And this is mostly because the Hungarian churches financially are very dependent on the government. And as they know this is a politically sensitive matter, they are not really there to discuss this openly.
All right, so this protest, hashtag Stop33, what are you hoping it will do? Do you think that there is a chance that this can be reversed?
There is one chance. So the law hasn't been published officially yet, but after its publication, the Commissioner for Fundamental Rights, which is the Ombudsman, has the legal right to send this law to the Constitutional Court. Actually, the Constitutional Court has the power to annul the law. So after the publication, we are going to ask the commissioner to ask for a constitutional review, because pretty much that's the last option we have.
All right. Okay. We're going to have to leave it there, but we certainly wish you the best in your fight, and let's hope that equality prevails in the end. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, so that's where we're going to leave the situation in Hungary, where transgender people are under threat in terms of their ability to have themselves described as they would wish on official documents. The government there is passing through legislation which will only recognize your sex at birth, and you're not allowed to change it any time after that, and a determination will be made by the medical people at the time in terms of chromosome levels and that kind of thing. And once that's been determined, that's what you have to carry for the rest of your life, no matter how you feel and how you want to be identified.